The Necromancer of Pricene contains adult content and may not be suitable for children. Parental guidance is suggested. In the world of Turinlay rests an enormous island called Pricene. The nation of Pricene is governed by a king and council, though the real power rests in the hands of 10 cursed immortals, powerful supernatural figures who serve only their self-interests. The land is plagued with black-blooded monsters, corrupt political leaders, and bloodthirsty bandits. And the one man who is willing to stand up to them all just so happens to be an unholy abomination, a summoner of the undead, the Necromancer of Pricene.
Welcome back, my fellow scoundrels, outcasts, and miscreants. Allow me to summarize what's happened thus far. Anya, the thief, stole my money, so I spent the morning mucking out the stables for the innkeeper, Mike. After finishing, I hit the road with Frank, and we returned to the bandit hideout to see if the Advents had missed anything. While I was walking, Anya reappeared, as thieves do, wearing her signature smirk, and gifted me my money back. Super thoughtful of her, I know. She'd been watching me, claimed she saw me raise the Vivified, and referred to me as a black mage. I'm not, but convincing her of anything else feels like wrestling the wind. When we returned to the hideout, I found a stash of loot, empty, of course, because Anya had already taken it. She's the worst. She made a deal with me. I tell her about my black magic and I get a gem. It's not black magic, but I told her my secret, and she held up her end. I left with an emerald. Now it's time to head back to the town to participate in the Festival of the Advents. Nothing like a whole town celebrating a bunch of lying, murderous assholes. But hey, there should be some good music. My name is Charts. I have the ability to reanimate the dead, and I'm on a quest to kill the most powerful man in Pricene. After I check out this festival. Chapter 5. The Advent Festival. By the time we neared Willow's Bend, we could already hear the sounds of the festival in full swing. Despite the limited preparation time, laughter and music drifted through the trees, mingling with the scents of roasting meat and sweet cider, carried on a light breeze. Even from a distance, it felt like the town was alive with celebration, every note and cheer inviting us in. I decided the stables were no longer the best place for Frank. The festival crowd would soon spill out, and keeping him hidden inside the town was asking for trouble. A small clearing just off the main road offered a better option. Tall grass brushed against my knees, while giant coneflowers, their purple petals streaked with sunlight, provided perfect cover for Frank once he sat down. Anya caught me glancing at her, and for a second, she looked as if she wanted to ask me something. Instead of speaking, she gave me a knowing grin, that sly smile of hers, the one that said she knew more than she let on. Lingered a moment too long. I had no intention of discussing Frank with her, or anyone for that matter. We left the glade, silence falling between us as we made our way back to town. The weather couldn't have been more perfect. Sunlight warmed the air, and Willow's Bend buzzed with activity. Laughter mixed with music, and the town had come alive for the festival. Children darted about in a game of tag. while adults moved through the market square, carrying goods and greeting each other with wide grins. I turned to ask Anya if she was familiar with any particular traditions of Willow's Bend, but unsurprisingly found that the little thief had already disappeared. Typical. My stomach clenched and my hands quickly grasped for my belongings. My coin, the emerald, and most importantly, the life seeds were firmly secured in their rightful places. I let out a soft exhale and then continued toward the market square. Several games had been staged throughout the area. Children giggled as they dunked their heads into barrels, trying to snag apples with their teeth. Their faces were painted in bright shades of yellow and purple, mimicking the forest animals they imagined themselves to be. They danced and played while darting in and out of crowds, only pausing to beg their parents for treats. Adults joined in the festivities too, axe throwing, whittling challenges, sack races, a ring toss game I'd never seen before, and other games had popped up throughout the square. At the same time, other areas were still being assembled for future games. 4 large pots had been placed near the shops, and several teams of men and women were working to brew their family stews. Mike, the ever-hospitable owner of the Rusted Saw, poured cider from a keg with a generous hand. A cider sounded lovely, but it was still early, and I wanted to keep my head clear for a little while. I made my way over to the water barrels and took a pull from the ladle. A little girl stood nearby, clutching a handful of yellow flowers. Her childish grin wavered as I approached. People often reacted that way around me, like I carried some unseen mark that made them uneasy. Typically, it makes little difference to me, but this time, it stung a little for some reason. Possibly recognizing the pang of hurt in my expression, the girl once more offered a timid but kind smile. It was fake, but I appreciated it. The young girl, only 6 or 7 years old, took 2 steps forward and wordlessly extended one hand, offering me one of her flowers. I took the gift, thanked her, and watched as she melded into the crowd. It took very little time to find the Advents amongst the revelry. Clyde was easy to find, already half drunk, and boasting loudly to a group of women near the axe-throwing competition. Somehow, his charm was working. He'd traded his usual armor and warhammer for a more festive outfit with pink trousers and a yellow tunic, already stained with spilled cider. I couldn't see Finch, but Cadamus and Aurora were taking turns spinning a fictitious tale to an entranced audience of gullible townsfolk. The would-be heroes were eating up every last bit of their newly acquired small-town fame. It made my stomach turn. I hated it. They were liars and murderers. I'm sure in their perspective my vivified were frightening, but they did the Advents no harm. And still, Cadamus and his gang slaughtered them without a second thought. And what they did to Guval was even worse. They murdered the bandit leader in cold blood, simply to ensure there would be no witnesses to dispute their wild claims of bullshit heroism. I'd like to think that they're merely a few rotten eggs, but in my experience, all heroes are bad people who were fortunate enough to win the fight and tell their story how they see fit. It was time to put some distance between me and the Advents. I didn't want my mood to sour more than it already was. We were having a celebration, and I was going to enjoy it. I grabbed some jerky from a nearby stall, letting the spice burn on my tongue. Wasn't even sure what kind of meat it was, probably goat or squirrel, but it didn't matter. I chewed slowly, trying to calm myself as I moved through the crowd. I watched the children play games while their parents engaged in light conversations. There was so much joy and positivity, but homesickness began to weigh heavy on my chest. Much like the jerky, the day was hotter than expected, so I sought shade beneath a pine tree near the bakery. As I scanned the crowd, hoping to spot Anya, someone else caught my eye instead. The Watcher. He stood out amongst the festival goers, dressed far too formally for the occasion. His gray trousers and red button-up shirt were immaculate, his charcoal vest neatly tailored with gold stitching. A sword hung from his left hip and a canteen on his right. He stood motionless, surveying the crowd with a cold, measured gaze. People instinctively kept their distance from him, warily measuring their steps as they passed. An icy jolt of fear ran down my spine as the watcher abruptly turned his gaze on me. He was more than 100 feet away, but his intimidating stare made me wish I was 100 feet farther. My instincts screamed for me to break eye contact, but I forced myself to continue studying him. I'd been searching for a watcher, and now I found one. His curly black hair, pockmarked face, and the long scar on the back of his right hand burned themselves into my memory. Footsteps sounded from behind me.
It's almost as if he's staring directly into your soul, isn't it?
Excuse me. Oh, Finch, right?
Yes. Do you think they teach all watchers to bore through people's skulls like that? Or just the 10 cursed?
He's one of the cursed?
You haven't figured that out yet. With how hard you or I fucking him, I assumed.
I had no idea.
How much do you know about the Watchers Guild?
Enough. I know they're the only group allowed to do mercenary work for gold. They have a monopoly backed by the Crown and Council.
And the cursed?
I know that the leadership of the Watchers Guild is broken into 3 groups. There's an administrative wing, a political wing, and the cursed wing. They handle different guild functions, but collaborate on all major decisions.
And do you know what the cursed do?
Not really.
Neither do I. But I know they are dangerous.
Do you think he's here to recruit you and your friends?
The others do. Or at least they think he can put in a good word for us.
You don't?
No. The cursed don't care about recruits or putting in a word for others. They have their own agendas. Because of their extended lives, they don't even see the world the same way we do. We are inconsequential to them and their ambitions.
They actually live longer than the rest of us?
I'm not sure. But I've heard that the leader of the guild, Torch, could be as old as 200 years. I've also heard that it's all bullshit. Some think it's just the name that lives forever. And the cursed title is passed down from one watcher to another.
The title and the weapon.
Yes, the title and the weapon. So, now that you know what to look for, which of the cursed do you think he is?
If he's one of the 10 cursed, and I'm not convinced he is, but he'd be Wrath. Wrath is the only one that carries a sword.
It's a falchion, but yeah, you're correct. That's Wrath.
You're sure of that?
As sure as one can be without asking him directly.
And why are you sharing all this with me?
Because I saw the way you looked at him. It's the same way you look at Cade. You want something. I'm just unsure what it is.
I don't know what you mean.
Sure you do. And now you know I'm watching you as well. And I'm better at it than you are.
Look, I'm not trying to start anything.
Good. Then we won't have a problem.
Of course not.
Wonderful. I'm sure I'll see you around, Charts.
Oh, okay. Goodbye. I stared after Finch as she disappeared into the crowd. I thought I'd been more careful and better guarded with my emotions. But I was wrong. She'd been watching me the entire time. How much had she picked up on? Did she see Frank? Did she know about my visit to the bandit hideout? The uncertainty gnawed at me. Maybe it was time to find another group of Advents to track before this party dug too deep. I turned to walk in the opposite direction, putting distance between myself and Finch, but as I shifted my gaze, there he was again, watching me. Not just any watcher, Wrath, one of the cursed.
The Necromancer of Pricene will return after these messages. Hey everyone, If you're enjoying what you're hearing, but would prefer to continue listening without ads, we have an option for that. All of our Patreon subscribers get ad-free listening to every show in the Creative Typo Network. If you're interested in becoming a patron and supporting the show and the cast, we invite you to check out our website at www.creativetypo.com, and the link to our Patreon is right there on the front page. All right, back to the show.
Despite my unsettling conversation with Finch and the unnerving presence of one of the cursed, I found myself sinking into the festival's rhythm. I should have felt overwhelmed, maybe even anxious, but the infectious joy radiating from the townsfolk soothed my tension quickly. The fated four wasted no time getting drunk, their humility tossed aside with the same carelessness as Clyde's spilled cider. As annoying as I found the Advents, the townsfolk adored them. Cadamus and Aurora were cozying up to the landlord, Big George Barlone, and the innkeeper, Mike. Cadamus threw his head back in a hearty laugh at something Big George had said, while Aurora lightly ran her fingers along the landowner's forearm. Nauseating, I know.
Oh.
Clyde, already swaying from one too many drinks, was playing a game with some kids. Each child would try to lift the heaviest item they could, and then Clyde would, in turn, lift both the kid and the item. The giant man would tussle the kid's hair before sitting them back on the ground. The children ate it up. Finch, who had rejoined the festivities, stood next to a small family, complete with husband, wife, and 2 children, as an artist scrawled out a caricature of the group. The archer smiled broadly with her mouth, but her eyes reflected no such mirth as they shifted from face to face, assessing the area for signs of danger. She was as high-strung as her bow, and likely the only one of the 4 Advents that hadn't taken to the cups. A murmur rippled through the crowd like the wind through leaves. The townsfolk began to flow slowly toward the Advents. I unsuccessfully attempted to discern the message disseminating through the crowd. Unfortunately, people tend to avoid me, but I followed the flow as the congregation gathered near the makeshift stage. I trailed behind the crowd, ensuring a comfortable distance between me and the nearest group. As the Advents reached the makeshift stage, the group paused to exchange handshakes and cheek kisses with the locals, basking in the warmth of adulation. When they finally ascended the stage, taking their places at the side of the podium, Mike stepped forward.
Ladies and gentlemen, townsfolk of Willow's Bend, our esteemed landowner, Big George Barlone, has invited me to give a small speech. Now, you all know I'm terrible at this type of thing, but I will try to do our heroes the justice they deserve. My friends and neighbors, today we gather not merely to celebrate a festival, but to honor a legend in the making. A legend that has breathed new life into our town, rekindled our spirits, and restored our hope. Today we celebrate the fated 4, our saviors, our heroes, our champions. Many of you may have heard rumors regarding the highway bandits that plagued our woods, disrupted commerce, and even took the lives of some of our longtime friends. While the traveling merchants may not have been residents of Willow's Bend, the impact of their loss will be felt among our town for years to come. But in such times of darkness, the light of hope is always sparked, and heroes rise to the occasion. The fated 4 took on this mantle, coming to us from great distances to free us of these nightmares. Bravely, they set forth into the forest to hunt down the villains and bring them to justice. But little did they know, black magic was at play. For not only were the villains greater in number, but they had made a deal with the dark and summoned a creature from the underrealm to serve their bidding. Led by the bravery of Cadamus, the fated 4 charged into battle, struck down the horror, faced off against the bandits, and reclaimed the lost treasures of our fallen merchants. Like heroes from one of Old Nan's tales, they returned victorious, bringing joy and tranquility back to our town. So raise your cups to Cadamus, Aurora, Clyde, and Finch, in honor of their valor, dedication, and altruism. They have shown us that heroes are not born, but made through acts of bravery, unity, and selflessness. They have proven that no darkness is too great to overcome, no foe too formidable to defeat, when we stand together with hearts united. To the Fated Four, we extend our deepest gratitude and highest praise. Your deeds have transformed our town and inspired us all. May your legacy be a beacon of hope and courage for generations to come. As we light the fires and raise our voices in song and cheer, let us remember that this celebration is not just for today, but for the countless tomorrows that your bravery has secured. Willow's Bend stands strong and free because of you. Thank you, Fated Four, for saving our town. Your courage will forever light our way. Let the festivities continue.
Cheers erupted from the crowd. Cups were lifted into the air and the band resumed their melody as the Advents bowed in perfect practice unison. Didn't Mike say that he was terrible at these things? Clearly, he was just as full of shit as the Advents. The speech was textbook story weaving. I felt my blood boil. Every fiber of my being wanted to scream the truth. The Fated Four were frauds, liars who painted themselves as saviors. But what would that have done? The town was drunk on the fantasy, and nothing I could say would sober them up. Besides, what did it really matter? The town was safe even if honesty and decency weren't. The Fated Four, with their stupid name, were getting exactly what they wanted and what I needed. Attention from the Watchers Guild. Just as the cheers reached their peak, a sharp and sudden scream pierced the air, freezing the festival in its tracks. Another followed, louder and more frantic, unraveling the joy of the crowd. I turned toward the back where chaos was erupting. Townsfolk were already scrambling, and then I saw them. 3 monstrous creatures barreling straight toward the heart of the festival. Chaos exploded around me, instantly shattering the festivities. Shouts of glee twisted into shrieks of terror as the monstrous beasts rampaged through a cluster of townsfolk. Their hulking forms, twisted mockeries of dire bears, sent festival-goers scattering in every direction. Carts splintered and barrels were overturned, sending cider cascading through the streets, the sweet aroma of the drink blending with the sickening metallic scent of blood. One creature scaled the side of a building with horrifying ease, perching atop the roof like some grotesque gargoyle, eyes gleaming as it surveyed the chaos below. The other 2 barreled into the crowd, indiscriminately ripping through flesh and bone. One of them began to unhinge its jaw, much like the beast from the day before, but a low snarl from the other stopped it mid-motion. Its mouth snapped shut as it pounced on a woman who had stumbled in her flight, her scream cut short as it ripped into her. These creatures weren't simple, mindless beasts. There was a chilling intelligence behind their black eyes, a calculating malice that made them all the more terrifying. They weren't here to feed. They were here to slaughter. The third beast sprinted across rooftops, moving with unnatural, predatory grace until it found a group of terrified townsfolk large enough to feed its bloodlust. With a violent leap, it launched itself from the roof of the cobbler's shop and landed on 2 panicked men. Their screams were swallowed by the chaos as the beast savagely tore into them. This attack brought the creature close enough to the stage that the Advents finally snapped into action. Finch loosed arrow after arrow, each one striking true, but the monster barely flinched. It was too far gone, lost in the throes of hatred. The arrows might as well have been pinpricks. Meanwhile, the other 3 Advents wobbled and stumbled their way toward the monstrosity. The idiots were still drunk from their revelry. they barely seemed able to focus on the fight. I lost sight of them until I saw Clyde hurtling backward through the air, his massive frame colliding with the edge of the stage with a sickening thud before he crumpled to the ground. Screams from the far side of the festival pulled my attention. Townsfolk surged toward the rusted saw, desperate to find refuge from the chaos. Constable Arun, sword in one hand, held the door open with the other, bellowing orders to the terrified crowd.
Go, go, go!
His voice boomed over the chaos, beckoning more citizens to his signal. But the festival goers were not the only ones to hear his call. One of the enormous bear-like creatures lifted its gaze from its most recent victim, twisted its head like an owl, its eyes locking onto Arun with a predatory intensity. The constable's face paled, his bravado crumbling under the creature's gaze. Without a second thought, he shoved the last two people into the tavern, quickly followed them inside, and bolted the door behind them. The creature's snarl grew into a roar as it charged toward the rusted saw. Its massive body hurdled the porch and barreled into the building without slowing. Splintered wood sprayed into the street as screams erupted from the tavern. What had once been a safe haven had now become a slaughterhouse. I couldn't see inside the building, and if I'm being honest, I didn't want to. Panicked, I placed my back against a wooden wall, scanning the chaos for anything I could do to help. What I found instead disgusted me. Aurora and Cade were dragging Clyde's limp form away from the fray, while Finch kept her bow trained on the creature, no longer firing. The so-called heroes weren't fighting, they were fleeing. So much for the fated four of Willow's Bend. A fire spread throughout the rusted saw, adding to the chaos inside. I looked for the third creature. It wasn't difficult to find. The monster that began unhinging its jaw earlier was tearing at the food cart full of jerky. The monster's hunger must have overcome its bloodlust. I frantically searched for a weapon, something, anything that I could use to sneak up on the creature, but there was nothing in the vicinity, and the beast was still some distance away. My initiative turned out to be unnecessary, as the Watcher appeared just behind the corrupted bear. A diagonal slash across the back from Wrath's blade drew the creature's attention. It turned with fury in its eyes, only to be met with two more quick slashes. The first separated the right arm from the beast. The second took its head. Black ichor gushed from the wounds, pulling on the ground as the fiend collapsed. Without sparing a glance at the fallen creature, the Watcher flicked his singed blade through the air, flinging ichor from its edges to the earth. A sound drew his attention. He turned and began a slow jog toward the rusted saw, which was now burning vigorously. As the chaos whirled around me, my eyes scanned the remnants of the nearly deserted festival, desperate for something I could do. That's when my gaze locked onto a small figure huddled near the water barrels, the flower girl. She was trembling under a pile of rubble, still clutching her last yellow flower as if it could protect her from the nightmare unfolding around her. A man with a limp was stumbling in her direction, unaware that he was leading one of the creatures straight toward her. Panic surged through me as I first shouted at him to stop, and then at the flower girl to run, but the chaos swallowed my words. She was trapped, too scared to move, and I could see the beast's eyes locking onto its prey. There was no time to think, only to act. I ran, muscles burning, hurtling over wreckage and bodies, desperately trying to close the distance. The creature reached the man first. I heard the sickening crunch of bone and the wet hair of flesh as it fell upon him, his scream cut short as the life drained from him. I dropped to my knees beside the girl, pulling her close and covering her ears to mute the horror. Her small body shook as she pressed her face against my chest, muffling her sobs. In her trembling hand, the yellow flower still remained like some fragile piece of hope in this nightmare. I gave her a cursory look for wounds, then lifted her into my arms. The beast was close, too close. If it didn't smell us, it surely would sense our fear. I might not be able to defeat these creatures, but I could save this girl. I checked over my right shoulder. The man was still being ravaged by the creature, although he no longer resisted. I gripped the girl firmly and ran. After only a few heartbeats, the girl squealed out in terror. I did not need to look back to know the creature had seen us and was now in pursuit. I ran as fast as possible, hoping someone else might steal the creature's attention. Nothing did. I felt the girl tighten her body in terror. It was close. I dove to the side just as the beast tripped and tumbled past us. It was back on all fours before I could fully regain my feet. I left the girl on the ground where we had fallen and lifted a piece of metal from the destroyed wagon. It wasn't much for a weapon, but it was what I had. The creature charged. I planted myself between it and the girl, thrusting the metal spike forward. It wasn't much, but it was enough to bury the metal in its chest. Black ichor gushed out, coating my hand and making the weapon slick and impossible to retrieve. The beast was hardly phased. It lifted me into the air like a rag doll. At full height, the creature was nearly 15 feet tall. It roared, tightening its grip and lifting me higher. The foul stench of death and decay assaulted my senses as its grotesque jaw unhinged, ready to tear me apart. I kicked and thrashed, trying to dislodge myself, but its strength was overwhelming. Saliva dripped from its maw, splattering onto my legs. Time slowed to a crawl. This was it. Then came the burst of searing pain, exploding through my chest like molten fire. My body convulsed. At first, I thought it was the creature's bite, but no. The pain was sharper, precise. I looked down in shock, finding a black falchion protruding from the right side of my chest, just below the collarbone. The singed blade had pierced through me and into the creature's eye socket. Its grip faltered as it let out a guttural howl. Its body jerked and spasmed, dropping me to the ground with a sickening thud. My knees hit the dirt, but I barely felt it. The beast collapsed beside me, its massive form twitching before finally going still. Black ichor drained from the monster's skull, oozing across the cobblestones, slick and glistening. I lay there, chest heaving. The dark liquid seeped toward me, merging with the bright crimson that pumped from my veins, and I could feel the warmth of life draining away. The world faded, my vision narrowing to a single point, just the black ichor and my blood swirling together, indistinguishable in the fading light. My pulse slowed, and darkness devoured me.
Charts is voiced by Josh Allen. Finch is voiced by Taylor Shea. Mike, the tavern keeper, is voiced by Richard Collins. Audio engineering by Adam Culbertson and Richard Collins. Editing by Tisha Zang. Music provided in part by Elizabeth Blakely and written by Nico Rodriguez. The Necromancer of Pricene is a Creative Typo Entertainment production. For more information about this show, our cast, or other shows under Creative Typo, please check out our website at www.creativetypo.com. And thank you for listening. A very special thank you to our executive producers from Patreon, Nick Mead and Patrick T. Arseneault.